Hello, Liberty lovers. Welcome to Latin Libertarians. I am your host, Martha Bueno. And as always, I am here with my good friend and partner in crime, Mr. Zach Foster. Hello, Zach. How are you tonight?
What's shaking?
Lots of stuff are shaking tonight. All of Latin America is shaking tonight. Honestly, this is a big, what the hell is going on with the world?
That is very true. That is very true. Although today, in addition to activism, which is a daily thing for folks like you and I, and also the day job and whatnot, we're getting ready for this week. A lot of getting ready to do. We got some shenanigans going down this weekend. Very exciting shenanigans. So I've been having a lot of getting ready to do.
We do. We have some great shenanigans. So if anyone's in the Miami area, should we talk about what we're going to do, or should we not tell people? I'm kind of like, we don't need to tell people, right?
Well, don't mention the boom booms. Just don't mention the boom booms.
All right. Well, for those who are wondering what it is we're talking about, we have 2020 vice presidential candidate Spike Cohen coming to Miami. Along with Zach. Zach, you're coming to Miami. You're coming to hang out with me, which is always a good time. And Spike, whom we love, is also always a good time. And we're going to do a few events. We're going to do, so first off, there's a dinner with Mike Tremont, who's running for office here in Broward County. So we're doing a dinner with him. And then the next day, Mike and Spike are going... Ooh, that kind of rhymes. Mike and Spike are going on an airboat, which everyone can join in on. And then we're doing a Cuban rally, which is also always fun. And then we are having a dinner. And then the next day we're going shooting. It's literally a lot of things. So if anybody wants more information, this is the rally for Cuba that we are going to do this Saturday at Ruben Dario Park, and it is a rally for freedom. I know there's a lot of Cuba on here. We're also collecting medicine, all types of first aid for Cuba for this effort that we're putting together to send medications to the island. So if anybody wants to come, if anybody wants to drop off medications, anybody wants to come fight for freedom, we are going to be at Ruben Dario Park for 3 hours. And quite possibly, we're going to have some special guests. Should we say, Zach? Should we say about who might possibly come? We may have a superstar.
Just give him one. Just give him one.
All right. Well, we're hearing that Silk Road founder Ross Ulbricht's mom is coming to this rally. So I think
Ross Ulbricht's mom has got it going on. She's all I want, and the Bitcoin is okay. Go ahead. I'm listening.
Well, anyways, I'm super excited. I hear she's coming, and as libertarians and as non-libertarians, going to jail for what is his sentence? 200 years? Several life terms?
Yeah, I believe 2 life sentences.
It's some crazy amount for building a website.
There are Auschwitz guards that got less time than that.
I mean, there's horrible people that have killed, who have done terrible things and have gotten less time than Ross has gotten. So free Ross. And also, if you want to come hear from his mom, she's going to be there as well. Again, this is a rally for freedom. We have on here Venezuela and Cuba and Nicaragua, which is the forefront of what we're doing. But it's a rally for freedom. And then dinner and come shooting with all of us. And so that is the gist of it. Tonight we have a really great guest.
If y'all want tickets to some of the events, because the Freedom Rally, that itself is going to be free, but as far as the boom booms, the dinner, the steampunk Zeppelin ship air battle, those are ticketed events. You can go to Spike Cohen's Twitter or Instagram account for more information. I believe it's real Spike Cohen on Twitter and literally Spike Cohen on Instagram.
And here is the event. There's also archery, which I think I've told you before. Like I had never done it, and then I tried it and I got a bullseye. Like the first time I went, I am like so thrilled. I finally found something I'm good at. What can I say?
Good for you.
I am terrible at sports. I'm so excited. There's something I'm good at. So anyways.
Yeah, shooting is probably the first sport that I was good at too.
It's a sport for those of us who can't do actual sports, I think.
Well, I mean, I can. It's just like the whole like football thing,
I was
like
throwing myself in there.
the running and like the getting tackled part. I wasn't too much about that.
I was picked last. Surprise, surprise, with my tall stature and whatnot. I was always picked last for every sport in high school. So anyways, getting back to libertarian things, we have a great guest tonight. Let's talk. We are going to obviously talk about what's going on in Venezuela, which is a huge story that I don't understand why it's not out there. But first, we're going to dedicate some time to Nicaragua, because the situation in Nicaragua currently, which also I find is not on the mainstream media. Honestly, the stuff we talk about, not a lot of it is on the mainstream media. So if you want to know what's going on in Latin America, seriously, this is the place to come find it.
This is true. Now, our next guest, we have interviewed him before in Spanish on a different show, but this is the first time that we get the opportunity to present him to our party members. This gentleman, Manuel Prado, has worked as an aide for opposition candidate Felix Maradiaga. He is currently living in Texas, and he is still involved in freedom activism. I am incredibly excited to bring him on.
Hello, Manuel.
Martha, Zach, good to see both of you. Greetings from the Republic of Texas.
Woohoo! Which tells the news that you just told me a few minutes ago.
Constitutional carry is law as of today, in September 1st, 2021. So there we are, good guys are allowed to protect themselves as well. How about that?
How about that? Great. So I'm getting a little bit of feedback. So I'm going to come right back. Please proceed.
All right, real quick, Manuel, tell us about your origins in Nicaraguan politics.
Oh, goodness. So Nicaraguan politics, Nicaragua in 2018, as a nation, stood up to a dictatorial regime. Basically, what's happening in Cuba and what happened in Venezuela has occurred in Nicaragua. The repression, the loss of the protection from one part of government to the next, totally totalitarianism, violations of human rights, assassinations, freedom of press. Right now, it's against the law in Nicaragua to wear what I'm wearing, a blue and white shirt. They'll pull you over and they'll interview you. You cannot pull out a Nicaraguan flag.
Why are people not allowed to wear blue and white shirts?
Because the dictatorship of Nicaragua says that we are a threat because we want to voice our opinions regarding, what's occurring in Nicaragua. So there you go. There you have it. It is right now we have 7 political pre-candidates to the presidency. We have elections in November. 7 pre-candidates are in prison. Yesterday, for the first time.
Wait. Did you say 7 opposition presidential candidates are in prison?
That is correct.
And they're all candidates for this election, right?
November 7, 2021, my man.
So 7 people on the ballot running against the president are all, wow, okay. Keep going.
And yesterday, for the first time in 89 days since their capture, there hasn't been proof of life. They haven't had the privilege of due process, access to attorney. God knows that they've had food or water. Yesterday, for the first time, 3 of the presidential candidates, pre-candidates, Juan Sebastián Chamorro, which comes from a historic family in Nicaragua, Arturo Cruz, the former ambassador to the U.S. of Nicaragua, and my dear friend Felix Maradiaga were able to see their next of kin, for a whole whopping 10 minutes.
And they were charged officially with a crime, right? What was that crime that they were charged with?
So the kangaroo court in Nicaragua, which is controlled by the dictatorship, receives laws by the assembly, which is controlled by the dictatorship, that say that if you speak up against the government in any which manner, if you say, hey, we want freedom if we want liberty, right, it's against the law. It's our way or no way. We are, the government. It's basically, he has taken this to the next level, referring to the dictatorship of Daniel Ortega and his vice president wife, Rosario Murillo. How about that?
That
Amazing.
is, yeah, that's heavy, man.
Yeah.
So, tell us about freedom of the press. What are some specific measures that the regime has been taking to limit journalistic freedoms?
Absolutely. So, freedom of the press.
Nicaragua is the country that this is in. We're talking about Nicaragua, people.
We're talking about an hour and a half flight from Miami, an hour and a half flight from Houston, where I'm at. I'm in Texas. There's Nicaragua, where there is no freedom of the press. So I kind of showed you how there's no separation between powers. So again, the legislative branch, the executive branch, and the judicial pass laws amongst their other, and they pass within 20 to 30 minutes each. So one of the laws says that if you are against the government in any which way, then they'll take away, your banks, they'll take away your registration, they'll take away your building. So we have a newspaper called 100% Noticias. It's basically our Fox News, our CNN in Nicaragua. And they were very outspoken. They're former Sandinistas that sided with Ortega, the dictator, and they were like, wow, this guy just went, bonkers. Well, the journalist, Miguel Mora, which is another of the 7 candidates, is in prison. They shut down his building, okay? They made it a women's shelter or center. They have armed guards with these hoods on and these big old AK-47 dressed in black. I wonder where that's coming from, right? And they shut you down. So the last free press we had, La Prensa, which is owned by a very powerful family in Nicaragua, Chamorros, they were shut down. The chief editor is in prison right now. The papers for the print were not allowed to be given to the press, and that's it. Now they're digital, but there's another law for that. There's more. So now there's a law that this kangaroo court passed in the assembly that says that it is against the law to use internet if you're not in favor of the government. So it's called La Ley Cibernético. So if you're online on social media,
the cybernetic law.
Yeah. If you're online, so kind of, we've seen that here as well. I wonder why. If you post something on social media that the almighties don't like, then, they censor you. Shame on you. But
we have the same law in Cuba. La Ley 35, Law 35. It's the same thing. It's like they have an agenda almost, these communist dictators.
Well,
it's almost like
they made a similar decree in Venezuela within the last 60 days.
No way.
So their version of we're gonna reduce violence. It's not talking about actual political violence in the streets. It's when somebody does hashtag Maduro is a son of a whore, or whatever obscenities that they like to hashtag him, then that poster is now a cyber terrorist, and a police squad will come to his house. That's combating violence.
What's crazy is that we are trying to censor the internet here in the United States as well. This is the part where people who have gone through this, people who lived in Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, we've seen it before. And when our government here in the United States says that we need to control, or things like Twitter can boot off of the president or so on and so forth, we all tend to go, I don't think this is something that is good, right? I mean, just crazy idea. But for people who don't live in these countries, people who have lived their entire lives in the United States that haven't seen this before, I think that's why it's really important to bring this up. We've seen it before. This is where it starts, or where it ends in the case of Cuba, hopefully.
That's right. So right now, this conversation we're having online would have been interrupted. You would have armed guards at your front of their house. And if you have a business, God forbid, it'll be shut down and confiscated. That's the way it works back home. And that's why we're here. That's why I fled Nicaragua in the 80s, because the same thing occurred. So here we are. We have a country that 71% of the population is younger than 29 years of age. Check this out. 71% of the folks are 29 years or younger. The only government they know is a dictator they hate. So April 2018, 2018, massive protest. People were just tired of it, you know? People were tired. It began as a reform to the retirement plan called Inc. And then part of that, it was marching because they were burning a natural reserve, Bosawas, India Maíz. And then the police reacted very strongly, you know, very, very, very forceful. I think they won 18 murders, you know, 18 people being killed for protesting with flags and banners. And Nicaragua got fed up, and the youth went to the streets massively. I have a good question. Looks like Arshel Gusset. Can I answer it right away?
Sure.
Yeah. So actually, yes. I'm of indigenous descent in Nicaragua. We're from the Mesquite Nation, and my whole population right now is about 1.2 million Nicaraguans of indigenous descent. And the largest crime against humanity, crimen lesa humanidad, was committed against us. So not only did they rape, kill, and torture my relatives, and we have to share numbers, but also they applied tactics that were applied in Hitler-esque times to us. They sent men to training camps. They sent women to retraining camps. They sent kids to retraining camps. And then they said, you know what? These lands are not yours any longer. So yes, we have been repressed. My house has been painted in Nicaragua. I was not allowed to get on a flight to Nicaragua just last week from Miami. Like, hey, you're not allowed to go back to your country, says your government.
But you have to tell the whole story. You were boarded on this plane.
Yes.
You were ready to take off. Your luggage was in the belly of the plane, and the stewardesses or the flight attendants called you to the front of the plane, paged you to the front of the plane, and said, you have to deplane because the Nicaraguan government won't allow you. So they managed to, I mean, at least they saved you the flight, right? At least they saved you from landing in Nicaragua. We got to give them that much.
Well, you know, the money was paid. And they're like, hey, you can go down to carrier number 7 and pick up your luggage. You're not allowed to go to your country. I'm like, well, let me pull out my Nicaraguan passport. Well, they don't want that one either. So it's complete totalitarianism. And people back home in Nicaragua and Venezuela and Cuba, and if you see in Cuba, you see, you know, that they're putting up this L, they're waiting. They're dying for liberty. They're claiming liberty. The liberties that we're here in this country, you know, defending. And, you know, I'm excited to be on this call today in this meeting because, man, I dig me some libertarians, man. You know?
I got a question, and I'm sorry to interrupt your libertarian love fest. Not that I have a problem with it, but I want to share this anecdote real quick. We were having a private video chat last week, and you held up a Nicaraguan flag, and other than just objectively looking at the Nicaraguan flag, I had no idea what I'm looking at. And you told me it's the Nicaraguan flag upside down. And I said, what do you mean it's upside down? All right, so upside down in protest, I get that part, but it looks identical to all the other Nicaraguan flags that I've seen around. Oh, and that's when I got it. All the Nicaraguans over here are protesting too and flying their flag upside down. So tell us a little bit about the Nicaraguan diaspora and Nicaraguan Americans. For starters, what do they face coming here as immigrants? What do they face as refugees? What's unique to them? And how is this real to some of the Nicaraguans who might have been born over here?
So, Zach, I'm going to start with the very basic function. So this is our flag, and this is our flag in distress. So if I fly this flag back home, either this way or that way or this way, I'm arrested. You cannot fly your flag in protest. It's against the law. In North Korea, like one of the leaders said, we escaped what's called La Navidad Roja. That's where about 700 indigenous were murdered, dismembered, tortured. Like I showed you earlier, the largest.
How long ago was that massacre?
1982.
Oh, so this is after the Civil War was supposedly over.
It was, and lo and behold, we were starting to hear the word coño in the indigenous nation of Nicaragua. So we had Cuban boots on the ground.
Because Cuba's where it
starts. There were Cuban boots on the ground on indigenous lands in Nicaragua in the 90s?
No. Before that.
Even before that, okay.
Yeah.
So Cuba has some decades involved in the violence in Nicaragua.
Oh, Cuba is responsible for over 700,000 deaths in Latin America till today, if not more. As being a process,
including on the island of Cuba. Yeah, absolutely. And
Cuba,
Venezuela and
Nicaragua, El
Colombia.
Salvador, Colombia, Guatemala. I mean, they're everywhere. I mean, I would like to touch the Sao Paulo Forum down the road. But where I was going was that, you know, they didn't like the fact that we didn't care for their structure of government. You know, this is our land. We've been living the way we live in, and here they are. You know, there's no more God. They say now we have these saints. You see, Cuba exports tyranny, murders, and some kind of gods that they have, some kind of odd religion, and they tell you this is no longer your land. This is government land. That cattle that your grandfather handed down to you, that's not your cattle now. It's government cattle. And, you know, you're talking to an indigenous nation. You know, we've never been colonized. You know, the British came. They didn't want to mess with us. The Spaniards came and said, oh, no, we're not going to mess with y'all. You know, we're over here hunting and gathering. You know, like, we don't want to mess with this group. And so how are we going to allow for a third-party group that has nothing to do with our nation, Cuba, to come down? So what happens? About 6,000 indigenous geared up. What I mean by geared up, they took arms and they defended themselves. From 6,000, it went to about 30,000, the Contra-Revolution. And that's what happens when you get a person that's really heavily focused on liberties, that understands that, you know, this is our God-given rights, right? And so ever since then, we've been the bad guys to the communists. So now that part of the nation, the whole country as a whole, has been completely, they've had one road built in 41 years. No running water, no sewer water, no electricity, abandoned. Why? Because we stood up to them. So where I was going with that is that there's folks, you know, dying to get here. You know, people on the island of Cuba, you know, flashing the liberty sign, people in Venezuela exposing themselves to their lives. And here we are with the libertarians. I consider the brain trust of liberty. They can cite you a ton of laws and statutes and declarations since day one of this great republic. And I think it's time we draw that line in the sand. I think it's time we take over.
Well, that's a really interesting position that you're arguing from. Now, tell us about some of the protests that you've been involved with stateside. I'm definitely interested in hearing about your U.S.-based activism.
Well, you know, beginning January, April, we started going to the consulate office here in Houston. And during the consulate office, the consul would come out and say, hey, you know, get out of here. But, you know, people back home were dying and marching. So we started manifesting ourselves. We made the streets shake here in Houston. Hundreds of Nicaraguans took to the streets. We started protesting. What you see right now with our Cuban-American brothers, and we saw it several years ago with our Venezuelan-American brothers, were the Nicaraguans, you know, out in the streets. Miami, D.C., L.A., Houston, all over the world. I had the privilege to actually fly down to Nicaragua with several of us and join the marches down there. You know, actually 4 marches to be honest with you. And the 4th march was the Mother's Day March. Okay? Mothers are sacred in our communities. Well, lo and behold, another 19 murders. Each and every single one shots from over 300 meters away in the eyes, in the throat, in the head.
Like they were sniped.
Well, you know, Zach, I would think that to shoot someone in the eyes from over 300 meters, you have to have some kind of skill set. So it wasn't by chance, right? It wasn't by chance. So I think that happened in Cuba. I think that also happened in Venezuela, if I'm mistaken.
I can confirm the Cubans and the Maduro regime have both deployed snipers to shoot protesters in the head from a distance in Venezuela. That is correct.
Documented and proven. We've done reports here that document the number of protesters that were assassinated, the dragging off bullets that were lodged in their bodies and their heads, and the projectiles that we captured, you know, from the ground and the casing. So it's what it is. I mean, this is a plan. There's a handbook. There's a reunion every year, right? Called the Sao Paulo Forum, where all these proxies to the Cuban bloc get together and plan how they're going to take over, you know, Latin America. And
it's like the Legion of Doom, but for LATAM.
Yeah. And Sadly enough, a lot of the trends, a lot of the behaviors we saw in our own countries, we're now seeing it here. I mean, who would have thought you'll see people dressed in black, starting fires, riots and chaos. In Harris County, Texas, where I'm at, and I'm very proud to be in Texas, in the Republic of Texas. This past year, our sheriff's department lost $10 million worth of funds. $10 million, they can feel that. And guess what happened on the other hand? Our judges, our activist judges, were releasing prisoners left and right. So what's happening in Houston, in Texas now? There's chaos in the streets, there's more murders in the streets. I wonder where that comes from. I wonder which playbook that's coming from. Interesting, Zach, Martha.
Very interesting.
It could be a
Very
coincidence.
interesting indeed.
It could be a coincidence, but a coincidence is no longer a coincidence, was no longer mathematically possible.
And I feel like, again, going back to it's like a playbook, right? We saw that well, at least in Cuba, they release actual violent criminals to then use the space for political prisoners. It's kind of like almost a playbook, but. Yeah.
So tell us about the next steps for the struggle. I mean, what are Nicaraguans in Nicaragua doing, and what are Nicaraguans abroad doing now that all these opposition presidential candidates are in jail? And it looks very obvious that simply, sitting back, let the Nicaraguans figure it out themselves. Well, what is it that Nicaraguans are actually figuring out about this?
Well, Zach and Martha, first of all, the diaspora has been extremely active. Nicaraguans in the U.S. and in Europe. We've had campaigns regarding passing certain legislation, passing certain bills. We've had campaigns that we've contacted our local leaders. We have an event coming up September 13th, where we're going to have two congressmen, hear us out as a diaspora movement in Harris County. And we're not going at it alone. We're going at it with our Venezuelan American bloc, with our Cuban American bloc, and our Colombian American bloc. We're about 300,000 voters in the county. So those 300,000 votes count now, and especially when we have one message, which is, hey, we got to cut the head over in Cuba and, and then liberate the rest of Latin America. It's impressive. It's impressive that right in our own backyard, we have all this destabilization going on. There's a crisis at the border. For the first time in the history of the world, there's more Nicaraguans coming to the U.S. than Salvadorans. That's never happened. I wonder what's causing it. So this controlled chaos mechanism, right, it has its roots elsewhere. It's called La Habana, Cuba. And there's no doubt that until we resolve that issue in our own backyard, and this should be an easy win for us. This should be low-hanging fruit. This administration said, you know what, we just failed epically in Afghanistan. Why don't we just, fix our own hemisphere and make people happy here, right? Liberty, is kind of like a basic fundamental. It should be, low-hanging fruit. So, you know what? We screwed up over there. Let's fix it over here.
Let's tie this in for the libertarians here in the U.S. How do you feel Nicaraguans feel about the parties? Do you see Nicaraguans embracing libertarian liberty ideas when they come to the United States, or do you see them going towards Republican or Democrat voters? Because I get that a lot, that question a lot for the Cuban community. So I'm wondering how you're seeing it with the Nicaraguan community.
Well, as I shared earlier, I'm excited because I'm on a libertarian platform. This is the brains. But unfortunately, Nicaraguans, as I shared with you before, we just don't bark. We actually almost toppled the dictatorship within 60 days of civil protest. There's some videos out there of where people are manifesting and just tearing down these statues that the dictator had all over town. Phenomenal. And where do I see us? Well, we're definitely aligned. We're very private market driven. We promote liberty. Over 80% of the country is considered a conservative base, God-loving, God-fearing, free enterprise. They can build my business. 61% of the Nicaraguan diaspora in Harris County are small business owners. So we're very independent driven, very familiar with our Cuban counterparts, very familiar with our Venezuelans. So naturally, we should be low-hanging fruit for the libertarians and the conservative base. But the difference is that, and I think this is by design. I mean, correct me and mute me and boot me off, if you need to. But
this is a libertarian platform. We don't do that. We let you speak.
It's amazing that the most vital aspect of U.S. politics, the Libertarian Party, has been silenced. There's not a lot of action coming out, man. And it's crazy. And I'm pretty sure that's by design. Because on the other side of the spectrum, I want to speak about the evangelical vote. They don't vote. They stay home and pray and hope that God comes for second coming and take them. So on one end, we have the brains, the libertarians, putting their head in the sand. And on the other side, we have the biggest voting bloc in America just kneeling and saying, I'm not going to vote because we get involved in politics. I wonder why. I wonder why the most potent party, the Libertarian Party, is where it's at, and why the biggest voting bloc that's conservative doesn't go out and vote. Why do they both receive the same message of not intervening or not getting engaged, not getting involved? I wonder if that's just another coincidence. Marco, who's that?
There's a hell of a lot of coincidences going on around here lately. Manuel, thank you so much for your time. Where can people follow you or find more information about your causes?
So the Nicaraguan diaspora is all over the U.S. We're here in Harris County, Texas. Our webpage is www.funadec.org. We're a nonprofit that promotes development, education, and culture. And people need to take notice because we're going to make certain that Miami and Miami-Dade is not alone. Harris County's coming, and this libertarian is going to take action. Thank you all.
Thank
you
so much.
very much.
And yes, these libertarians are taking action right here, and you all can join us. If you're in Miami this weekend, Nicaragua is invited as usual to this because this is a fight for all of Latin America. It's not just Cubans. Although Cuba is the head of the beast, as Manuel just said. Cuba is where it's been coming from, and Cuba is extremely intelligent and extremely well at warfare, right, Zach?
They
what we're seeing right now.
They took the CIA's playbook from 60 years ago, and they've been freaking running field goals with it for decades. I'm actually impressed. I really am.
I think they're better than the CIA. I'm not going to lie. I think you have to respect your enemy, and in this case, I think Cuba is a
I guess
very
that's true because Cuba
one.
succeeded. The Cuban regime succeeded in making Venezuela and Nicaragua into carbon copies of Cuba, including the repression, including the massive poverty, and they're starting to translate that to Colombia, to Chile. I respectfully disagree about the remark of activist judges releasing prisoners. However, just to be honest, I must confirm that while more than 90% of BLM protests were peaceful, in several of the ones that were violent, so please take that statement directly in context, in several of the BLM protests that were violent, somebody who was deeply tied to the Cuban or Venezuelan regimes in some meaningful way was involved. Some of these folks were hardcore Marxist-Leninists who have been to Cuba, who have been to Caracas. Others were people who have actually been on these student diplomacy trips to Venezuela. And there's a very particular style of tricolor backpack that Maduro's regime would give people. And some of these kids were actually wearing that freaking backpack when they were arrested in Florida, when they were arrested in Texas. So just to be completely clear and have context on the waves of protests and counter-protests in our country last year, according to, I believe it was Harvard University, hello, am I still there? Hello?
You're still there.
Okay, perfect. My screen froze for just a second. I couldn't, right as I was about to give the statistics. So the statistics that I saw last were 93% of BLM protests were peaceful, and 88% of the right-wing counter-protests were also peaceful. So from the left wing, 7% of them did have violent incidents. From the right wing, 12% of them have violent incidents, including the incident that killed our brother and fellow party member, Garrett Foster. Rest in peace, an excellent libertarian and an excellent Texan. Anyway, Cuba, they are doing what the CIA used to do. And again, our government did not succeed in making Afghanistan like the United States, even through a certain degree of repression. The Cuban regime, which unleashed a lot more repression and a lot more death and destruction than even the American military-industrial complex in Afghanistan, those guys have taken it to the next level. And if you guys want the numbers, 280,000 dead for the 20-year war in Afghanistan, that includes enemy combatants, that includes civilian casualties, 403,000 for the Bolivarian Revolution.
That's
and
just
counting.
one country. That's just one
And
country. That's
counting.
just Venezuela.
That's
That is
just
not
Venezuela.
Cuba, and that is not Nicaragua. That is one country. Cuba is extremely successful in killing people.
Or Colombia, the ongoing
Colombia.
civil war in Colombia. Cuba has been training FARC and ELN guerrillas since 1962. As a matter of fact, one of my favorite news stories from last year, I wish I thought of it. At the height of the pandemic and COVID lockdowns, there was a platoon of Colombian ELN guerrillas who were being trained in the Sierra in Cuba, and they actually asked the Colombian government to repatriate them, which means that they would have been detained, they would have gone to prison, and then they would have been put in one of those reintegration programs that they have for ex-guerrillas. They were willing to go to prison back in Colombia, then continue living as guests in Cuba. And remember, while embargoes generally are wrong, the embargo, the weenie embargo that the U.S. government has on allows food and medicine. And as a matter of fact, talking about food and medicine, what's a problem that we discovered down there from some of your relatives and my personal friends?
So, well, there's lots of issues in Cuba. So the one that we keep harping on, and I'm going to just bring it up in case you don't know what's going on in Cuba. Cuba has a huge outbreak of COVID. For those people who think that COVID isn't real, it's real. It's affecting people, especially places like Cuba where they don't have food and they don't have medicine. So, of course, you have a weakened population. COVID comes in and it's devastating. So not only is Cuba overrun with COVID cases, their hospitals can't compare with ours. They have very rudimentary at best. I know that everybody talks about Cuba being a world dominating medical force, but it's not. It really isn't. Sorry, Michael Moore, your documentary at this point is, I hope be proven beyond the shadow of a doubt to be fake. There's one great hospital in Havana where everyone can go to. That hospital still has medication and oxygen.
Yeah, the Michael Moore Hospital.
Right. Because that's where the dictators go and the government officials go. So, of course, and people like Chavez, he went and he got his cancer treatments there. So for those people, there's everything. And then there's the rest of the population. There's the people like my family that, nothing special, just regular population. Those people, they have access to nothing. It's so bad that my cousin's 2-year-old son can't get Tylenol to lower his fever. I mean, there's literally nothing on the island for anyone. And we're talking about people who my family supports. So they have the funds. They just can't find medication. There's nothing on the island to buy. And so the government is saying, they went on a tour. Miguel Díaz-Canel loves to say, I released all the things stopping medicine and food from coming into Cuba. Please send us. We will accept everything. And as a matter of fact, he said that anyone traveling to Cuba could bring all of the food and medicine they could carry. So all us Cubans got really excited and we're like, yay, we're going to send a whole bunch of medicine to Cuba. That is until we discovered that there are absolutely no flights into Cuba. I mean, talk about a brilliant strategy. So he's out there telling everybody, come on in, we're open, bring us your stuff. And then there are no flights. And I pulled this up today just because I wanted to take a look. I am trying to find flights. Where are flights coming from and going into Cuba? So this is from FlightAware. It's an application where you can see every flight that goes into any airspace, anything. And this is Cuba. This is the island of Cuba. And you can see that there's one flight. It is not a commercial flight. You can get no information on it. It is either a government flight or a private plane. That's it. There are no flights coming into Cuba. There are 3 flights that I have been able to find that Cubans are taking from Miami to be able to make it into Cuba. There's less than 1 per week. One is going, you can travel to Spain. So you fly all the way to Spain and then back into Cuba, or you can fly all the way to Turkey and fly back into Cuba, or there's 1 flight leaving Miami. So those are your 3 options. They have not given any landing permits for airplanes. So no new flights are being done. There used to be flights from all over the world to Cuba. There are no longer any. So there's no way for us to get food and medicine in. There's a cargo plane. There's several cargo planes, but that is so backed up that for us to get food and medicine into Cuba is taking months, 2 months. It doesn't matter. We're still going to use this method. We're still going to get food and medicine into Cuba because it will eventually, like, at least if we can send something, they will have very little. It'll trickle in, but we're going to keep our efforts up. We're going to keep trying to send more people to take medication once we find more flights. We're going to keep fighting, but this is tragic. The Cuban government is killing its people. There's no other way to put this. They have no food, they have no medicine, and now there's no way to get it in. So Cuba's on a mission to kill its people. And the only thing I can think of is they're on a mission to kill particularly the elderly and the infirm, which are the ones that we know are going to suffer the most with COVID. And we are sitting by watching this happen, and it is absolutely devastating. And I wish there was something we could do. And we've mentioned this before. The United States is not really cooperating, are they? So we do have these 3 wonderful women that I'm going to share with you guys right now. And they are from Miami, and they are currently sitting in front of the United Nations building. They have a petition going around, and they are asking for the United Nations to get involved. They are asking the United Nations to provide the cargo ships, the medical ships that they have used in other locations, 2 of them, to please come to Cuba to moor there and be able to take care of patients. That is their number one desire, is for some medical intervention for Cuba, humanitarian intervention. This is something that is very important. They're on a hunger strike. This is day 4. Not a single person from UN has come out to have a conversation with these women. They're vowing to do this. They have said that they were going to stay there however long it takes. They're already having distress issues. They're already showing signs of distress. And I don't know what to tell you, Zach. I see the American media not paying attention to these women. They have been on every Cuban platform that I can think of. Every platform here in Miami, every influencer is talking to them and having them on. However, UN just doesn't care, and the US media just doesn't care. So here we are. What are we to do? How do we get there? As American citizens, we've talked about this before, we are now not allowed to make the decision. As a Cuban American, I cannot get in a boat and deliver supplies. I cannot head towards the island because I will be taken prisoner, not by the Cuban government. I will be taken prisoner by the United States.
Yes, by the Cuban government, but also by the United States.
Okay, let's assume that I make it there, Zach. Before I've even made it there, the United States government will take me to jail, will fine me over $25,000 a day, and will take the vessel. There is no excuse for this. If I wish to commit suicide by going to Cuba and delivering aid, that's my decision. I should be free to make that decision. I'm not saying that I'm going to, but there are over 1.5 million Cubans right here in the state of Florida that are very anxious to go save their family one way or another because the government is killing its people. I have to keep repeating that because it seems to me that nobody's hearing it. You have a government that is committing murder against its people, and we're doing nothing. And I am flabbergasted. I don't know how we can, as a nation, just sit by. Again, these 3 wonderful ladies from Miami made it up to New York to do this hunger strike, and they're my heroes. I don't know what to say. They are amazing. They're there. They're trying to call awareness to this issue, and they're all moms. They all have young children at home. They're not doing this because they're doing this because they care, and they're all making the L sign, which is liberty. It's liberty in English and liberty in Spanish. So, what more libertarian do you want than these fine ladies right there?
Well, they're not doing their hunger strike in a black and yellow T-shirt. Therefore, I got to question if they've actually read Human Action. Well,
they're not actual libertarians, guys. They're not actual libertarians.
Hey!
I don't know if they know about it.
People need a bridge. Yeah, we'll reach out to them. Well, our people will call their people. But I do admire the courage of what they're doing. It is very gutsy. I hope somebody pays attention to them before they have any more serious problems with the whole not eating for several days thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Moving on.
Moving on, we have other big news in Venezuela. Yep. I mean, again, the South America is like on fire, people. I don't know how to stress this enough. There's a lot going on in Latin America, and we're here to tell you about it. So what's going on in
Venezuela?
Probably
somebody from like the Libertarian Party of Baltimore watching this right now going, why the hell do they keep talking about South America? What does this have to do with the American LP? Because, there's going to be a couple 100,000 more folks from these countries. Say again?
Why are you picking on Baltimore?
Well, they're just the first ones I'll get to, but like if I need to make fun of like all the individual 3,000 counties and their county affiliates, like in a playful brotherly manner, then I will do so. Just give me time to do so. Okay, so I imagine somebody from the Libertarian Party of Covington, Kentucky is watching this right now going, what does Nicaragua have to do with this? Well, this has a lot to do with the Libertarian Party of Kern County, California, because as I said, hundreds of thousands more people are going to come to this country as refugees. They're going to be living here. They're going to be working here. The closed borders libertarians are going to talk about their ticker jabs. And, a lot of people are just, there's a lot of ways that, there's a lot of ways that just mass migration of refugees can complicate things for other folks. Obviously, let them in. Yes, security screen, vet them. I got to be honest. When we talk about open borders, I get the feeling that a lot of people just get the mental image of the ending scene from Born in East LA with Cheech Marin, where there's like 500 people at the border and they're all just mobbing the border patrol like it's a battle from Braveheart. That's the mental image that they get. No, it's absolutely not like that. People would still be coming through customs and border patrol checkpoints. As a matter of fact, there'd be a lot fewer people coming through the desert if you are able to come through a customs and border patrol checkpoint. Biometric scans, background information, and filter them that way. All right, it's possible. Anyway, Venezuela does not have a legal government right now. There are people. There is a drug cartel over there, and they have a lot of people wearing a uniform that they call an army. But according to Venezuelan constitutional law, there is no legal government in Venezuela right now. There are only warlords. What do I mean by this? Well, let's actually go into what Venezuelan law is, all right? I'm not just some random American like dictating to Venezuela whether they do or don't have a government. I am reading their constitutional law. The one with 138. Okay, we'll take a look at Article 138 from the 1999 Constitution. So this is the current Constitution. All the mad people who are really mad at me from the Libertarian Socialist Caucus, this is Hugo Chavez's Constitution, all right? This is the Constitution that was approved by the people's constituent. Article 138, a usurped authority is of no effect and its acts are null and void. Maduro was not legitimately elected because there's another article in the Venezuelan Constitution. The National Assembly, that's the parliament, has to be the one to convoke an election. The National Assembly did not convoke the election that Maduro claimed reelected him, which was already fraudulent in and of itself, which is why when his first presidential term legally expired on January 23rd, 2019, the parliament, the National Assembly, according to Article 233, can we go to Article 233, please?
Yes, sir.
Article 233 is a very long one, but in that particular article, it has the provisions where when an elected president becomes permanently unavailable to serve prior to his inauguration, blah, 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 the president of the National Assembly shall take charge of the presidency of the republic, blah, blah, blah. Then the interim president's job is to convoke a new presidential election within 30 days. So what happened? January 2019, Maduro's term legally expires. His re-election was fraudulent. It was fraudulent, and it was also not convoked by the parliament. So even though he is still in the presidential palace with a bunch of Cuban soldiers around him, constitutionally, according to Venezuelan law, he's not the president. So they make Guaido the guy, and the interim president of Venezuela has one job, that is to make free elections happen.
Within 30 days.
He did not. Yeah, within 30 days, he did not do that. He
How
absolutely
long has it
failed
been?
to
It's
do
been
that.
3 years?
2 years, 7 months. Yeah, something like that. So anyway, they both had one job, and now let's go to the image with the gold seal on it. It's got sensors. It's got a photo on it that's censored, and it's got a gold seal. Will you go to that image?
I will when I find
All
it.
right. So the image with the censored face that I'm about to show you is a deportation document that was emitted from Juan Guaido's embassy here in the States. This is for somebody who was being deported from the United States last year for crimes that they committed over here. I'm not going to go into detail, but that's one of the few deportations that I would agree with. You come over here, you do crimes, yeah, screw you, get out of here. Anyway, as the U.S. recognized government of Venezuela with an embassy inside the United States, that diplomatic mission was the one that did this type of paperwork. With that emergency paperwork, other governments, other countries that recognize Guaido would allow that detainee to pass through their airports while he is being deported back to Venezuela. Now let's go to the next one. It's another one with some sensors on it. So that was from a little bit over a year ago. Some Venezuelan refugees got deported over the last week. That was a very shameful thing. Myself and Edison tried to help them out. We were unsuccessful. This is a different authorization slip. This is from 2 weeks ago. This was not emitted by the interim government. This was not emitted by Juan Guaido's embassy. This approval for a Venezuelan to be deported back to Venezuela was signed in Caracas by Maduro's government. I say again, this approval for the United States to deport a political refugee who was asking for asylum back to Venezuela is signed by Maduro's own regime, which means now the cat is signing for the mice to be returned to its doorstep. That is absolutely ghastly. That shows us that the United States is no longer recognizing or doing business with Juan Guaido's interim government. They're doing business through back channels directly with Maduro's regime, which is why in the third paragraph, it's in Spanish, but in the third paragraph, they specifically say that they appreciate the efforts of the host nation who is carrying out this deportation, the host nation being the United States. How do we know that Juan Guaido's interim government does not exist anymore? Let's go to the piece of paper with the signatures. So even though constitutionally Juan Guaido's presidency has been unconstitutional for a long time, lately in the last couple of weeks, the interim government actually formally ceased to exist because Juan Guaido sent some of his representatives to join representatives from other opposition parties, and I use the term opposition loosely. These are loyal opposition, which means that while the regime emptied 2 prisons and then put the prison convicts in uniform and gave them guns, don't tell me it didn't happen. I have video of it. They sent these prison convicts with guns to go massacre indigenous people in February of 2019, right? And these parties were still loyal opposition. These people sent the police death squads to summarily execute more than 3,000 people last year in their homes, all right? And these people are still loyal opposition. All these turds together were negotiating in Mexico with the Maduro regime, and Juan Guaido totally signed off on it. Now, on the left is a signature from the president of the fake National Assembly, which is the regime's National Assembly. So they had their fake constituent. It did its job, which was preventing a counter-revolution. They dissolved that. Then the regime had another election last year, and these are the National Assembly elections you saw in the news. That is also an illegitimate entity. But on the left, the president of Maduro's National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, signs as a representative of the Bolivarian government of Venezuela. And then on the right is the opposition signature. It does not say interim government of Venezuela. It says the United Platform of Venezuela. The United Platform of Venezuela. And all the opposition parties, including Juan Guaido's, are now telling the people, okay, guys, we're going to go to elections with the regime now. And even though they have never respected electoral results before, we're going to try it one more time this time. Even after the regime has murdered 400,000 of our people to stay in power, we're going to try elections one more time. So,
but this time it'll work.
Yeah, but this time it'll work. Guys,
this is the magical time.
I work with Venezuelan refugees on a daily basis, okay? Daily basis from all 24 states of Venezuela. These people do not support these elections. And the fact that the US government is saying, all right, the Venezuelans are figuring out for themselves. Yeah, the regime and the opposition are having a dialogue, and they're going to have democratic elections, and we're going to call on them to respect the conditions of democracy. It's absurd. It is absurd. I have buried people that this regime murdered. And this time they're going to, no, it is absolutely absurd. None of the Venezuelans support it. And the fact that Elliot Abrams, who has helped do cover up for massacres that were committed in Central America by anti-communist forces that were backed by Reagan, Ambassador James Story, the U.S. ambassador, I have a lot of words to describe them. None of them are appropriate for this broadcast. For the fact that these guys are saying the United States absolutely supports this process where the false opposition is handing over the country on a platter, the U.S. and the American people support this, that is ghastly. That is absolutely ghastly. As a United States citizen, I do not support my government giving democracy grants to these fake opposition parties who sold out their people to a butcher's regime. As a United States citizen, I do not support that. I don't know about you, Martha.
I'm with you there, Zach. And the fact that we're sending people who are requesting asylum, people who have been brutalized by this regime, we are sending them back to this regime.
Yeah. Literally, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but imagine if when you got arrested, the police were not just rude to you. If you're a woman, the cop just did not use that opportunity to cop a feel or anything like that. Imagine that while you were in jail, they were not just interrogating you from the other side of a table, while cops play good cop and bad cop. Just imagine that they took a knife and they cut a gash behind your ear down one way. And when you did not give them the answer that they wanted to hear, they cut another gash behind your ear across. And when you still didn't give them the answer that they wanted to hear, they cut you again, and then again, and again. I have seen photos of those injuries, and those people right now, those political refugees, have deportation orders against them. And it is the regime that is signing for them to be sent back. And our government is applauding this and saying, yay, Venezuela is getting democracy back. That is ghastly. After what we did to Afghanistan over the last 20 years, and especially what we just did to what Uncle Sam did, because with what my friends and I have been doing, I will not share guilt for this, for leaving the Afghan allies behind. But good Lord, like, how much more is the United States government going to do to people? And in the latest two cases, it wasn't even the U.S. government actively hurting people as much as just doing whatever crooks want. Because, hey, those guys are in charge now. So if the butcher wants them, whatever. Last thing I'm going to show you guys, because we're running short on time. Do we have that one video? Do we have the video of Eduardo? All right. I have been telling the world, not just you guys, I've been telling the world for over 2 years that Juan Guaido was false opposition. Everything that the U.S. was supporting and funding and financing, they were getting played. And that the entire time, Guaido only ever planned to go to elections with the regime. The video that you're about to watch, the first part, it does have English subtitles, so you know what's going on. That's my friend Eduardo, and this is something that he is saying 1 week after the April 30th uprising. Remember when Juan Guaido tried to do a coup one time? That was a show. This is Eduardo speaking 1 week after that, more than 2 years ago. Could we rewind it a little bit? All the way to the beginning? All right, and then right after Eduardo says a couple of comments, you're going to see me say a few things, and that's also got subtitles, all right? This is from 2019. Play. Volume. volume. Is it paused?
Yes.
Rewind it, please. They missed it. Bear with us, folks.
De elecciones 9 meses después de darse por iniciado este acuerdo, donde el candidato de la MUD sería el señor Leopoldo López. Y por esto es que necesitaban ponerlo en escena y la irresponsabilidad. Pero lo que entiendo que necesitan es maquillar un poco la cosa con algo de confrontación para al final aparecer con una solución mágica, pero que en el fondo es la única que siempre tiene: negociar con el chavismo.
Apenas anoche yo les presenté en vivo varias pruebas de cómo la oposición falsa venezolana ya había recibido propuestas del sector privado de mercenarios y contractores militares que estaban listos para entrenar un nuevo ejército venezolano para entregar esa pizza, así como dice ese pueblo. Y lamentablemente la oposición falsa eligió convivir con el narcorrégimen. Entonces, tras todo este tiempo, nosotros decidimos, vamos a simplemente publicar esto porque Freddy Guevara puede irse al infierno por ser un traidor vendepatrias Rosalito. Y eso es solo una pruebita de que estamos haciendo.
All right,
So you were delivering pizzas. And when the heck are we going to deliver pizzas to Cuba, Zach? Because honestly, these regimes need to end, and it all starts with Cuba.
Well, what I was trying to do with those folks was help them make their own pizza. However, I did not know at the time that the specific people that I was talking to, whom our government had recognized as the government of Venezuela, they did not want pizza. They did not want pizza. They wanted the hunger of socialism because the regime had either threatened their families or bought them off individually. But more than 400,000 of their countrymen have died. Most of them have been murdered, like physically murdered, war violence and paramilitary violence. And now they're going to election. That's insane. So you guys saw for yourself. You guys saw the change in paperwork. The interim government, Juan Guaido's government, no longer exists. And while Maduro is still down there with the Cuban regime propping him up, as far as Venezuelan constitutional law goes, Venezuela does not have a legal government. They are totally in a gray zone. And that presents some golden opportunities for the Venezuelan people, who are going to have the responsibility of stepping up and taking action themselves over the next couple of months to demonstrate to the world that actually maybe these blowhards are lying. Because just like Eduardo said back in 2019, their objective from the very beginning was to pretend to have some confrontations. So in the end, they can come out and do what they were always going to do from the very beginning: negotiate and have elections with the regime. And as somebody who has been involved in the civilian side of the struggle for more than 4 years now, I have lost many tens of thousands of dollars trying to do that work, trying to save human life, for the fact that those people are doing what they are doing, and Uncle Sam is supporting that and probably going to finance that with some of our tax money. That is ghastly. That is horrendous. I am 100% against it. And good Lord, I hope that the Venezuelan people take the same example as the wonderful Northern Alliance resistance in Afghanistan. And if you guys want to see what the Afghan people are doing to fight for their own freedom now that Uncle Sam totally screwed them over, look up the Northern Alliance on Twitter. I believe it is NA2NRF is the Twitter key, NA2NRF. Great bunch of guys, and that's them doing it themselves. That's not Uncle Sam, but of course, it's important to them. All right, quick reminders. If you guys want to party this weekend with me and
first,
Martha,
before partying,
if you want to libertarian party this weekend,
if you want to come and fight for freedom, this is it. Ruben Dario Park this Saturday. This is exactly what we're talking about. We need to fight for freedom. Freedom doesn't happen on its own. So come join us. Bring medications to send to Cuba. But then we also have parties because you know what? It's been a rough few days and we need some partying going on over here. So there's this. Come shoot with us.
Boom,
Zach
booms.
and I will be there as well. Obviously, I'm on the thing. And Spike Cohen. What more do I have to say?
Man, the pressure is going to be on.
And Tasha, people, forget about Spike.
Yeah.
Tasha.
I mean, Tasha's spouse was nice, but Tasha is going to be there. Yeah.
I have to say, I adore Spike Cohen. I know this is politics. We're the Libertarian Party, but there is no politician that I have met that is more genuine than this man. I simply adore him. I thank him so much for coming out and supporting Cuba and Latin America. This guy's awesome. So come party with us.
If y'all want event tickets, go to Spike's Twitter, Real Spike Cohen, or his Instagram, literally Spike Cohen. There you will find the links where you can get your tickets. And
if you want to come eat Cuban food with all of us, that's also available. That's also Saturday night. And also tickets can be found on Spike Cohen's or on the URL that's there that I cannot say because we are on this program. But please come. It's going to be awesome. There will be Cuban food. You get to choose what type of food you want and come hang out with Tasha Cohen herself and her husband. And her husband. So if anybody that speaks Spanish, tomorrow we're doing the show together in Miami. Right, Zach? You'll be here tomorrow?
That is correct. We will be doing it together in studio.
So, and we'll also, I'm sure, post something over the weekend, but we'll see everybody back here on Wednesday night next week.
See you guys next week. And may the force be with you.
And may freedom be with you.